Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Scott Luton with Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's show. We've got a treat in store for you today. You know, I love manufacturing, and we've got a manufacturing dynamo and really someone that's really passionate about industry and leadership that's here today with us. We've got a business leader, a manufacturing industry titan, keynote speaker, tireless advocate, and accomplished writer and mentor to many. You know, our guest has won countless awards and lots of recognition for work. She serves on many boards, including the board of the National Association for Manufacturing, amongst others. Regular modern machine shop contributor. We may touch on that too. So let's welcome in Aneesa Muthana, President, CEO, and co-owner at Pioneer Service. Aneesa, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Well, I enjoyed our pre-show conversation. I wanted to keep some of that for the show itself because you're starting to tell some stories, but it's such a pleasure to connect with you today. And of course, we've got a dear mutual friend in Hannah Kane that thinks highly of you as well, which we're starting to uncover the legend of Aneesa Muthana together.
Thank you. I think she is a trailblazer and someone that I look up to. So it's an honor, you know, to have made this connection for me.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for your time. I know you've got 1,000 things going on, so we're going to dive right in. So, you know, on the front end, just like I had a chance to get to know you a little better in my due diligence, and then when we connected prior to going live here today, a sense of who you are and your journey, even before you became the leader at Pioneer Service that you are. So tell us a little bit, where'd you grow up, and give us a couple anecdotes from your upbringing.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Chicago. My parents opened up a clothing store when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. So right away, the entrepreneurship was in our family, and I was exposed to it very young. And then at age 11, my parents saved up their money and opened up their own machine shop. And entrepreneurship and manufacturing is a very dangerous combination.
Sounds like it.
It was great though. You know, growing up, I remember, you know, commuting back and forth from my dad's company, and we would write down company names from trucks. Like if we saw bar stock in the trucks, we would write it down. That was our sales approach, you know, like make cold calls. Oh yeah. So those are the types of things. We worked in the shop. We did it all. My brothers and I did it all, from cleaning out oil tanks to making cold calls to paying bills to, you know, leading and feeding bar stock into machines and lifting. And, you know, back then in the 80s, it wasn't like today. So a lot of hard work.
Yeah, agreed.
But fun. Really, it was our family time.
Well, such an awesome and uniquely engaging upbringing. Before we and you're kind of answering the next question I was going to ask, which was, you know, kind of where'd you first get that inclination that you're going to, you know, spend, you know, almost 3 decades in the manufacturing industry and leading and doing and innovating. I'm assuming it was those early experiences in that family manufacturing business that said, hey, I love this stuff and I can't wait to do it next.
Yeah. So my dad never really talked about the industries we served. He just, you know, quality was very important to him. You know, he says to us, you know, what I say to my team today, you guys are my best salespeople. Don't screw it up. You know, make a quality part. And back then it was bar grinding. That was the difference between my dad's company and my company today, is that his is a bar grinding shop and mine is a CNC Swiss shop. So, but quality, you know, applies to all. And so we realized that, you know, whatever we were making, whatever we were, you know, grinding the bars for was very important. It was touching lives. We knew that at a very young age, and that importance of that and the importance of making the customer happy was really instilled in us at a very young age.
Yeah, I love that. Just a couple quick follow-up questions before we get into what Pioneer Service does. You were telling me pre-show about your mother and the trailblazer she was as well. I know you mentioned your father a couple of times. Tell us about, in a nutshell, a little bit of your mother's journey.
Yeah, my mom came into this country in the late 60s, and she came from Yemen like my father, and when she realized that she could contribute to to bring food and put it on the table for the family, she didn't hesitate. She would take buses and she would work. She worked in a dirty, grimy factory back in the 60s and 70s. And, it was in a time where racism and sexism wasn't anything anyone was talking about. But she didn't care. It wasn't a career path for her. It was feeding the family. And even with her limited English, she was able to do very well for the company. She would get raises without asking. And we always had a home cooked meal. She really set that bar really high. I'm not going to touch it. She's like, she's a powerhouse for sure. And to this day, she's my rock star, my mentor. And so I love my mother, not only because she worked hard and paved the way for me, but because she's got a heart of gold and she really does care about people.
Wow, I love that. It makes you want to reach out and hug your mom right now. What is
I'm gonna soon
this weekend
after the second vaccine.
So what's your mother's name?
Suad.
Okay.
They call her Sue. They've always called her Sue or Susie.
Okay. Well, all the best to Sue or
Thank
Susie
you.
or Suad. What an inspiration. All right. So getting back, well, one more thing I want to ask. You kind of alluded to it twice, and I think for folks, there's study after study that talks about the stigma related to the manufacturing industry, right? How a lot of folks that may not know anything about manufacturing, they instantly go to what you kind of described in the 60s, that environment where dirty and you're doing the same thing, hour in, hour out. There's so much that has changed in the manufacturing industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Those types of jobs are gone. They're long gone, for the most part. I don't want to say for everyone, but for the most part, they're long gone. Today you go into my shop and it's very high tech. We have Industry 4.0, we have automation, we have, very complex parts that you need a skill. You need, and we have engineers, a quality department that, you can work in marketing and still be in manufacturing. There's the industry is extremely broad, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be machining. But I think that for the sake of American manufacturing, I think it's a responsibility that everyone really appreciates what makers do. The pandemic proved the fact that manufacturing isn't what it was before, that we are able to change our process, change what we need to do to make ventilator parts and to make things and get things done. And so it's important that people at least know that it's a career path option. Whether or not they choose it is a different story.
So well said. And as we were very intentional over the last 18 months to find those stories of good news, because there's so much else out there. And there's manufacturing story after manufacturing story, whether it's the ventilators, companies moving on a dime to make stuff they never had to jump in the fight against COVID-19, or to your point, all the in the food manufacturing business, all the safety implementation, management, and distancing measures they had to put in place. And they did it, and they took that curveball, hit it out of the park to get back into production. And it's just story after story. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Sure. I
want to kind of shift gears to more of your professional journey and, of course, what y'all do at Pioneer Service. So to set the table first, you kind of mentioned some of your differences between your company and your father's. But in a nutshell, what does Pioneer Service do?
So we're a contract manufacturer of precision machine parts. We have CNC turning centers, CNC Swiss machines, and we also have centerless grinders, which my dad also has. But we do piece part grinding, and he does bar grinding. And so we serve a wide variety of industries, everything from aerospace to medical devices to electrical vehicles. And yes, that's Tesla. I get asked that all the time. When you say electrical vehicles, do you mean Tesla? Yes, I meant Tesla.
It's almost like they're the, like Kleenex has become the tissue. It's almost like
Right?
Tesla's becoming the electric vehicle. I mean, kudos to them, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we were in the battle against COVID through biotech equipment and medical devices, including ventilators. So we were extremely proud to be in that space. And, hopefully that'll be behind us soon.
Amen to that. We're all looking forward to that day that we're firmly in this post-pandemic environment. So now you've got a big anniversary right around the corner at Pioneer Service. Almost 30 years at the company. And if you could and we were talking pre-show, when you love what you do, that 30 years feels like 3 or 13 weeks or something. But can you speak to your journey, kind of where you started out in the business and as you moved into the C-suite?
Yeah. So I left my father's company when I was 23 years old. Back then, it was even more difficult to succeed as a woman, honestly. Because I was his daughter, I was always labeled as princess or, that would be a good one, a babe or honey. And it honestly, it wasn't necessarily that I took offense to the words. It was more that no matter what I did, I couldn't prove myself. And I would be in my brother's shadows. So I had to really prove myself and leave that and go into business with my uncle. And my uncle actually also was in manufacturing, and there was a little bit of rivalry between him and my dad. And I didn't want to be part of that. And I didn't want, that same dynamic to happen again with my uncle. So I told him, I said, okay, we'll partner up, because he was in my ear, and he's, we worked together in the 80s at my dad's shop. I used to feed his bars, and he used to tell me I was the best feeder.
Man, that's something you don't hear every day.
Oh, I know. It was like, it was an accomplishment when I was 14. But nonetheless, we partnered up, and he agreed to be my silent partner. And that was back in 1993 when I took on the role of CEO, president, and co-owner. And, it was dark, grimy, dirty back then. It was a screw machine shop, Brown & Sharps, Davenports, very loud machines,
right.
Manual base. And it took, I was, what do they say, fat, dumb, and happy. So for the longest time, until really 2012, when I really transformed, we didn't have much innovation or technology until around 2012, when I lost 90% of my business. It went to China. It was a very difficult time for us. And through that, adversity, we paved the way for ourselves and learned Swiss. We learned CNC. I got out of my comfort zone and started networking, joining associations, listening and taking notes. And, I say it all the time. It's a very famous phrase, Google is your friend. And I was on Google and YouTube till early mornings, all night, trying to figure out what is it that we need to change to. And so the transformation, sometimes I call it transformation from hell, because nobody was on board, not even our sales team. They're like, but what about these photos that we have of the, on our website? I'm like, if we can change equipment, we can change photos. And so it was very difficult to convince others that we had to go. And I think it was partly my fault. I think the lesson that I learned was that, you don't want to send anyone home. You don't want to close the doors. You don't want to fail anyone. The people that have been working for me, I wanted to make sure that they had a job. So it was a little bit too comfortable, because then, transforming themselves as the company transformed was really the biggest obstacle. And but we got there, and I've built a very strong team, very capable, and so yeah, that was the in the nutshell, that was the journey we had.
I feel like I've gotten an MBA in manufacturing in the last 5 minutes. Really, really impressive, and really, as having been in manufacturing, where I love that industry, that sector, and now as an entrepreneur for the last 7 years, what you just shared really resonates with me, because adversity is what. And I'm not a metallurgist. I know that you do something to steel and you make it stronger, but you forge it still, right? And you kind of put it through put it through the ringer, and you come out on the other side much stronger, right? And that is in a nutshell. That's what happens for entrepreneurs that are willing to get to your point, get out of that comfort zone, battle, put the boxing gloves on, and battle that adversity, and come out even when it requires a massive transformation from where you started. So I love that. I'm going to ask you one other question. So, in my experience, at least, and I know I've lost plenty of business in my life. I'm not sure if I've lost quite 90% of my business to China, but that's when life has thrown you a huge curveball. Clearly you fought through it. And in those tougher days in my journey, I can think of a few folks that, man, they really picked me up and were rocks and helped get through those days. Was there one individual or resource that, beyond some things you've shared, that really comes to mind there?
Yeah, so we were very fortunate. We partnered up with a great organization, Star Swiss Machines. They really supported us. They provided endless training. It was, I had, when I think of the one person, it's Jose Luis Hernandez. He's actually on my LinkedIn. I think my latest post, I talk about him all the time. Anyone that knows me knows the pioneer of pioneer service, and that's him. He was here before I was here, and he started deburring, and now he is our production supervisor, our lead setup and programmer. And I have to say, he's gone through hell and back. I remember at one point when we went into Swiss, he would come in on the weekend and not clock in and just try to figure it out. And he had the support of Star, which again we were extremely grateful for, but there's only so much they can do for you. They'll send in their team a few times, but you got to figure it out. And this was definitely out of his comfort zone. And that's why, he set the bar so high that it became like, if he figured it out, if he came back, he came from deburring and running Browning Sharps, what's your excuse?
Right.
We can all figure it out. So I think he did set the bar really high. My expectations aren't as high for everyone, but he was the one person when I would get a print, especially in the very beginning, and I would be like, can we even do this? And Star would say, sure. And then when it was time to deliver, he was the one that delivered. And so I'm grateful for that to this day.
Love that. All right. So we're building a short list of superheroes. We've got Sue, and now we've got Jose.
Yeah.
So we'll see who else
That's
we can
gratitude.
add.
I'm grateful. I'm just grateful. It's when someone, if anything, my message would be is that we can't build a company alone. And he was definitely by my side.
I love that. You got to seek out those big rocks. Okay. Yeah. So now I want to talk about, a lot of our listeners, wherever they are across the globe, some of them are still in school. Others are maybe early on in their professional journey. Others may be, several years in, and they're identifying their strategy to get into, the top tiers of leadership, kind of where you are. And I always like asking, CEOs and owners and whatnot, what's one great piece of advice? And they've already gathered, Aneesa, from you already. I've got about 18 things that I think folks can benefit from. But speaking to that group, is there one thing that comes to mind that you challenge them with?
So if you're looking to build, if you're looking to go into the leadership role, and honestly, you're in a leadership role, whatever role you're in, you're a leader of someone or something, right? But I think that core values, need to be more than just pretty words on the wall. You have to really define what those core values are for you and make sure that who you surround yourself, your day in and day out, are always in check, towards those core values, because I feel like there's a lot of marketing that goes on. I feel like that people talk the talk, but walking the talk sometimes can be very challenging, especially in this industry, because we're being pulled in so many directions and we want to make everyone happy, right? We want to make our team happy. We want to make the customers happy. And so always just keeping yourself in check and making sure that those core values are really your go-to. You're constantly, and allowing others to keep you in check. We have core values, and my management team knows that if I stray, they have every right, privately, of course, and with respect, and but they have every right to come to me and say, integrity, outreach, leadership, learning. And so, so I feel like that is the foundation of any success, any plan that you have. That's the foundation that everyone should have.
Love it. When you've got those bedrock core values, what a strong foundation to build anything, any organization, any industry. So thanks so much for sharing. All right, so we're going to move from pioneer service and your role there and your journey there, and we're going to kind of broaden out a bit and talk about the manufacturing industry and to some degree, global business. That's the world we're in. We're never going back, and that's a beautiful thing. I think the digital, the technology that is just growing by the hour has really made it a much smaller world. That's a beautiful thing. So, if you can't, to our listeners or folks maybe viewing, if you can't tell, Aneesa's got just a little bit of passion about manufacturing, which is awesome. What does that stem from exactly?
I think it really aligns to basically any question you ask me. It's people first. It's really putting and realizing, whether you're making something that touches lives, and that obviously is people, right? It's your team, connecting and building partnerships with your team, with your customers, with your suppliers, and having a purpose and not just making stuff just to make stuff. It's not about the bottom line. It's about really driving, whether it's innovation or continuous improvement or training your people or, making, finding ways to make the parts more efficient. Those are all great, right? But what's the purpose behind it? And when you have a purpose, when you have a calling, when you feel like you're connecting the dots, then it all becomes more of a, this is the process, this is what it's about, this is what I'm doing, this is, the outcome may not be what we want. Many times it's not, unfortunately, but you can go home and feel good about what you've done. And tomorrow's a better day. So I'm always driving continuous improvement. It was funny because for so long I was, again, just old manufacturing, doing the same old. But once I got a taste of innovation, once I got a taste of technology, and I knew that we're capable of doing better, we're capable of figuring things out that our customers haven't even figured out. We look at a print and we know if it's over-engineered based on what their application is. We look at a print and we find it, we quote it one way and we run it a different way. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it takes longer. But realizing that full circle and understanding that, it's blood, sweat, and tears that go into every part. And hopefully less blood and tears. A little sweat is okay. Yeah. But knowing that, and having that purpose and I feel like that's where my passion lies, and knowing that I'm touching lives in every way, in every aspect of what my job entails.
Love that. So, beyond the huge task that you have and your journey on of leading your manufacturing company and impacting your team members' lives and helping to provide opportunities of growth and more jobs and more innovation. Beyond all that, your clone must also do all this other stuff that you do, such as serve on the board of directors for the National Association for Manufacturers. So why do you feel compelled to serve as a volunteer leader, and what's your favorite aspect around that role?
Well, I serve currently on two boards, and they're both very important. One is NAM, and they are a huge advocate and our voice and for manufacturers in DC. And so I feel like that's extremely important that I contribute to that, and that I also rubbing shoulders with the best of the best in the industry. That's great for my company. That's great for me personally. I learn every day. And then I also serve on the PMPA board, Precision Machining Products Association. It's a national board. I'm actually currently first VP, and I'm always blown away. These are literally my direct competitors. And we have listservs and we help each other. And during the COVID, we had many of us were making parts for the ventilators, and the opportunity, some of us got the opportunity through PMPA, and some of us had our own customers that needed parts for the ventilators. But when one of the members would have a machine down, they needed a tool or a gauge, or they'd send it, and people were sending gauges and tools on their own accounts,
Wow.
on their own UPS accounts, next day airing, because they wanted to support that. And they're always talking about keeping manufacturing in this country. And so seeing that firsthand and being part of that camaraderie, it's true, there's competition, but there's more camaraderie and respect than anything. And, again, not giving back to the community for so long, I take it as a responsibility to do, outreach is one of my core values, and outreach is me serving on the boards. Outreach is me out there speaking. Outreach is also, hosting students and hosting those that don't necessarily would consider manufacturing as a career. And not because I think that everyone's going to join manufacturing, but because I feel that there'll be advocates of manufacturing, and we need advocates actually, and we all know about the workforce gap. And so I now, realize that my perspective has changed. My perspective now tells me that it's my responsibility to serve on these boards, and my responsibility to give back to the industry that has been my livelihood my whole life.
So going back just a second there, you said it's changed. Initially, you didn't see that
Yeah.
as part of your role as a leader?
No, in 2012, that was when I first started to network. That's when I first started getting out of my comfort zone and really just seeing what everyone else is doing, and also sharing the information. Because, the thing is that when you're networking, some people find it like, either unnecessary or what am I going to learn? Well, what are you going to learn? Maybe you won't learn something. Maybe you'll talk through something and someone else will learn. And then you'll build a partnership, and you don't know that relationship, that, where that's going to end. Because just like you and I are talking right now, and this opportunity came to me, it was through networking with Hannah. And if I didn't, I wouldn't have this. So, I talk about a personal board of directors, right? Those personal board of directors are basically your friends, your family, your mentors. Those are the people that you really, are aligned with and are learning from. And you're not going to get that unless you're out there. And when you're giving, you call it karma, you call it fate, whatever you want to call it. In the end of the day, you get back what you put out. And so it's important that you're putting out.
I love it. Gosh, there's so many. Aneesa, we're going to have you back. You're dropping lots of clearly passionate, been there, done that leadership perspective that is applicable in manufacturing, but it's also applicable in general to whatever you're trying to do in life. And when you give, you get. And not that you necessarily look to get because you give, but that's how it happens, right? I want to talk to you about more of as we kind of leave industry leadership, I want to talk about kind of a topic that's getting a ton of lip service, especially in the last 18, 24 months. And that's the notion of nearshoring and reshoring, and a lot of folks are making bold predictions on where global supply chains will move from a procurement and sourcing standpoint. And and I'm share what we're seeing, right? early on we were getting calls for our take on is the pandemic going to move everything? All manufacturing's coming back to the States. Well, I love manufacturing in the States, but also I'm a big believer in global supply chains that exist for really important reasons. And you can still invest and grow manufacturing in the U.S. while making sure that the industry globally is healthy and growing as well. So it doesn't seem like we've seen as many of the bold shifts as a lot of predictions were clamoring for, say, 6-8 months ago. We'll see how everything shakes out. Clearly, the semiconductor industry, we've seen and it's not going to happen overnight, but we've seen some big investments take off here in the States, which will probably be good for a variety of different reasons. But anyway, that's enough of my opinion. Aneesa Muthana, what is your take on this reshoring, nearshoring, any changes that where the manufacturing industry is maybe pulling a lever here and pushing a lever there? What do you see?
After losing 90% of my business, I'm not bitter. I honestly, I'm glad that it happened. Obviously, it was a struggle. It was a transformation that I needed to go through so I could survive and not just survive, but thrive in this industry. And so I'm okay with those parts being in China. I don't want those parts anymore. I've evolved. So giving that away or letting it go, at first we had buyers that really did not understand the landing cost versus the unit price.
Right.
So we had to educate them. And by the time they figured it out, it was too late. I changed my equipment and I moved on. And so I make really cool parts. I make parts, and I'm not looking to fight over pennies with China. I'm looking to build relationships and partnerships with my suppliers and with my customers and make them feel like the value that I bring isn't the cheapest price. Because that's not what we're about. We're about servicing them. We're about Kanban. We're about, providing them a quality product. We're about getting parts done in, record-breaking time and not charging them any, expediting fees.
Right.
Sometimes they're unavoidable, but nonetheless, when we can do it, we will do it for them. And those are the relationships and the partnerships that I want my energy spent on. I don't want to fight over parts that are so simple and bring back equipment that I don't want to bring back. I want something that's going to challenge me to be an innovator. I want parts to challenge me, not to be the best price. I want to be competitive, obviously, but I want to be efficient. I want my parts to be meeting, above and beyond as far as the quality requirements out there. I want to build, more and more in my QMS and build processes and lock down processes where we know the innovation, we're done here. Let's lock this down and let's innovate here. That's where I want my energy. And so I'm not a believer about bringing all the parts back. I feel like there may be some opportunities.
Sure.
For instance, the ventilator parts, I felt like that was almost like a shame on you. We should be making some of these parts here.
Right.
So don't put your eggs all in one China basket. I'm just saying,
no, we've heard a lot of that sentiment, and I would argue we're still learning a ton of exactly kind of where the system broke down. There were some early lessons learned when it comes to global supply chains or any sector that makes up, global supply chains. But I think between some of the changes already made, some of the opportunities that folks are finding without being opportunistic, right? Which is another takeaway for us. You can find opportunity without being opportunistic, for sure. Kevin Bell with AGG coined that. And then as we continue to see and get into the post-pandemic where there's still other lessons to be learned and which will definitely factor into some of the sourcing and procurement decisions that we've made. But I like your approach, and also like how you're not bitter from that tough period of your business. You invested in your company and you elevated the game and are able now, it sounds like to me at least, to bring so much more value to the table. And you don't look at it transactionally, which the savviest business leaders, that's what it's about, the relationship and the bigger picture value you bring to the table, right?
All the time, every day. Those are the conversations that I'm having with my team. Those are the conversations that I'm having with my customers and suppliers, because of the fact that, it's not about one transaction. It's not about making a killing. It's about building a relationship and being the go-to, knowing that you're on a very short list. I want to be on those very short lists. Do I have competitors? Absolutely. And I think that's healthy. I think that keeps us all in check. And this is the United States of America. That's about opportunities. It's about, being better and earning your way, and not just being given those opportunities. But while we're on the topic, what I would say, and we're constantly challenging the government to remove these tariffs off of us, because right now, the products that we're getting from overseas, they're fine, but the raw material, U.S. mills are closing, and our options are, becoming, very, very limited, and delivery now, lead time for raw material, it's out there now. We're paying much more than Europe is paying. So I don't want to get too political here, but at the same time, that's something that I feel like where our energy should be spent. Yes. Is how do we make it easier for the manufacturers of this country to make good product and make them and provide them as many resources as possible, whether it be raw material or training or opportunities for innovation. If we're not thinking of that way, manufacturing is going to be the dying industry.
I think that is powerfully apolitical, what you just shared there. And I echo your sentiment. It's interesting. I don't have her name right in front of me. I was hoping I had a window open with it. We've got a newly confirmed by Congress trade representative to China. And from what I was reading in a great article over at Supply Chain Dive, which is a great publication for supply chain news, they're going to, a priority for the Biden administration is to grant a lot more exceptions to the tariff schedule that was implemented. So I'm hoping we get to a bigger win for all, and a more competitive position for the U.S. manufacturing industry. But hey, if we can get some early relief with maybe a ton of exceptions, hey, we'll take what we can get right now. But in the greater picture, let's find ways to invest and ensure that our manufacturing industry here in the States can compete in a very healthy manner. So love it, Aneesa. All right. So where are we going next? I'm like a kid in a candy store. So much I want to pose to you. Sure. All right. So diversity and inclusion. Now, I'd love to get you to weigh in here. As you know, just like we talked about some of the other earlier topics of the day, we're getting a ton of lip service. And, I would argue there's a small bit of value because at least, I hate lip service. I'm all about action leadership, but it gives the challenges more awareness. So, but we need more change. So I just want to, what's your take when it comes to diversity and inclusion? And I want you to speak to this phrase I picked up that you use quite a bit, is empowering without dividing. So what are your thoughts?
You got 2 hours?
Bonus episode.
Sure. When I used that phrase, I was referring to women in manufacturing, and it was empowering women and inspiring them, because we need to recruit people, right? And we don't have enough women in the industry. And so for that to really happen, the part of the advocacy are women groups, women organizations, women awards. And I feel that those are necessary because I feel like we need to, again, empower and attract them to come into this industry, right? But what advocacy is not, it's not dividing. And we have to remember that diversity and inclusion represents, the minorities. It represents women as far as gender, different backgrounds, different age groups, and it represents the old white male. And so when we portray, a group of people as villains and expect them to embrace change and diversity and inclusion, without having the inclusion for them, It's a plan for disaster. And I speak about that often, and I get a double look, like, really? Yeah, I was raised in this industry, and the old white male is my mentor, is the person that has paved the way. Those are the people that worked in this industry when it was old, dark, and grimy. And so for us to write them off or portray them as villains is not fair. And I feel like there's a lot of lip service, like you said, that is really just, I think, noise, really, because the actionable items is about empathy. The actionable items is about partnerships and relationships and respect. And so when you're talking about a group of people that you want diversity and inclusion for at the expense of another group of people, then you're not talking about diversity and inclusion. You're talking about division. And so I think it's very important that our message is clear and that our intentions are intact. And so for me personally, I love that my team it's like looking at the United Nations. I have an individual, I can say his name, John Schaefer. He's, retiring on April 9th. And, when we were doing somebody was interviewing us, they just grabbed him and asked him a couple of questions, and I didn't know what they asked him, and I didn't know what he answered. And then later on, when the video footage came out, and this is an old white male retiring, right? And he was on camera with tears in his eyes, and he said, I've been in this industry for so long, and I've never worked for someone that cared about their people like Aneesa. And you don't see a lot of people like that. He didn't need to say woman. He didn't need to say anything. He just spoke from his heart. And how can that not move me to do better? How can that not, am I going to write him off because he's the old white guy? No. And he knows that. And so I say it like it is. If you haven't noticed already, I'm very transparent.
I love it. We need more of that.
But but I don't appreciate people trying to represent who I am in a negative way at the expense of others. And I feel like if we don't have empathy on all sides, and I don't mind breaking those barriers. I don't mind paving the way. And not everybody is equipped to do that. Not everybody wants to come into work and break barriers or pave the way for someone. They just want to go home and, make a good living and take care of their family. And so for them to have the responsibility to take that responsibility, it's not fair. So for those that can, sure, but not at the expense of others. And that's what I think about diversity and inclusion. And I'm a big fan of bringing more people from all different backgrounds, because we need that in manufacturing. It's a win-win.
Right.
Exposing those that wouldn't necessarily consider manufacturing as a career, and then filling those positions that we so need.
So you shared a ton there, and I'm processing all of it. I'll tell you, it's a tough topic to talk through. I don't know about you, but on my end, I like to have the conversation and further the dialogue and discussion, and because I've learned a ton from some of the conversations, much like this one. But I don't want to say the wrong thing, and everyone's kind of got a different take on what's the right thing to do or right thing to say or what have you. I think oftentimes I try to take your approach where I'm just going to be transparent and tell you, and the message might come out a little bit fumbled a bit, but the intentions and the intentions to act and take steps is there. What do you? And I really appreciate your message where let's not villainize. And you didn't say this, but I might say it. Let's villainize the folks that make victims of others. Right? You're talking about some of the things that took place when your mom in the '60s, and some of that crazy societal norms that was in place in some of the workplaces that we've all read about, heard about, you name it. It's neat to see that be completely not tolerated anymore, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So switching gears a smidge on the same subject, with the manufacturing industry, I love how you said it needs people from all walks of life. That's a beautiful thing for innovation, a practically successful thing for innovation. How can, if you're speaking to a room full of business leaders, is there any best practices you might share so that their organizations and their cultures within the organizations are open and welcoming, and that's what it communicates to really, have plenty of applicants, so to speak?
Absolutely. So I feel like everyone wants a sense of belonging. And that's the inclusion. And if everyone feels that they belong and no one's on a pedestal, because you don't want to check off a box,
right?
Because diversity is not checking off a box, a political agenda, playing the victim, or the trophy employee. So if those aren't your intentions and you're transparent, there's going to be bumps in the road. You're going to likely offend someone. But
despite our best efforts.
Yeah, you know what? But we're human,
right?
We're human, and we make mistakes. And probably when I listen to this, I'm gonna be like, "What did I say? How did that come out?" But you know what? My intentions are good, so I can put my head on the pillow and sleep good at night.
Right.
Because if the perception is different than what my intentions were, I have no problem clearing it up and even apologizing.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's humility, and we all should have that.
Yeah.
But I think for us to broaden, the walks of life in our shops, in our management team, is that we don't necessarily put them on, as far as a trophy employee,
right?
But we use the opportunity to really showcase that we are advocates of that we don't just hire someone and put them in a corner and say, okay, I feel better now. I have, a woman, I have a black person, I have, whatever minority,
checkbox,
checkbox that you're making, right? You bring someone in the management team, you actually listen to them, you check your intentions. If you're hiring a qualified person to do their job, yeah, it might, if it being the first woman or the first whatever, fill in the blank, whatever that is, it's going to be like, oh, wow. And then move on.
Right.
Just move on.
Yep.
And sometimes you have to have those uncomfortable conversations with your team and say, you know what, those posters that you have on there, you got to bring those down now because we got a woman in the shop, and they're not going to like it.
Right.
And you may want to have those conversations before you hire the woman. You may want to build that culture before you expect someone to it's not a plug and play. It's building the relationship. It's building a culture is an ongoing battle. It's not a checking off a box. I have my challenges. I hire people. I think they're a great fit. 2 months in it, I'm like, what happened?
Right.
What happened? So you don't know. You just don't know. But if you make everyone feel like they belong, that sense of belonging will bring conviction. That conviction will bring the bottom line higher. And so that's really what you want. You want when you put people first, you put all people first. You put everyone first. You don't pick, you don't have favorites. And if you do that, and people will see right through it if it's coming from the top,
right, or
if it is checking a box. And if people see that it's really intentional and you're treating everyone fairly, then you will filter out those that are not on board, that are not aligned to your core values. They will end up leaving, whether you ask them to leave or not.
Put all people first. You shared so much goodness there, but put all people first. And I also like how you alluded to that. It's not taking this one action here or this one action here and making this one hire here. It's a journey, and it's a collection of decisions and hire talent but be intentional about being inclusive and welcoming of all, the best talent regardless of who they are. So what we've come so far, kind of as we start to wrap, as we're talking with Aneesa Muthana, President, CEO, and co-owner at Pioneer Service. We love talking about Eureka moments here, right? Because we have them day in, day out sometimes. In the last 18 months or so, chock full of Eureka moments that go well beyond just supply chain or manufacturing, but leadership, right? What's one of the Eureka moments that come to your mind here lately?
Gratitude. My family's healthy. No deaths in my team or their families. That in itself, is a moment of celebration. And then not furloughing my team, being able to shift from making parts for Tesla to making parts for ventilators, literally overnight, because the faucet, was turned off. Like all industries were done.
Right.
And so we didn't know for a while what we're going to do. We were making parts towards blanket orders that had no releases just to keep everyone busy. And then the ventilator parts increased. And then everyone, felt very comfortable and worked with conviction. And so I felt that those are the moments that I felt like, when you do put your people first, sometimes you'll find people, they won't appreciate it. They'll leave you for pennies. And I've learned that the hard way. I remember not even just one person, several people. You train them, you invest in them, you put them and you try to empower them. And then your competitor comes and poaches them and for pennies or $1. And you're like, man, not even with a conversation or a thank you or a handshake. So you're going to get that. But that doesn't mean we should stop doing what's right. And what's right is giving back to the industry, giving back to our people, recognizing them. I remember recognizing an individual that was very green, had no manufacturing experience whatsoever. And, got him on getting him awards and putting him on social media and got all this publicity. He was building his resume and walked out. And I was like, what? And then this year I did the same thing with actually 2 individuals. And my management team was like, are you sure you want to go through this again? I'm like, absolutely, because I have no regrets. And, and did I not make mistakes? Of course I made mistakes. Of course, I might have said something that offended him and he walked out and, I don't know. And if I knew, I would apologize for it. But my moments of really inspiration is knowing that there are people that appreciate it, that there are customers that recognize our greatness, and when we fall, it's okay. We're in this together. And this pandemic proved that. We proved that competitors are camaraderies, that customers are partners, and they understand, and we understand. We're in this together. We had commitments prior to the pandemic. We're not going to force it down your throat. We're not going to make you take these parts. We'll work with you. And so those are the relationships that were pretty good to begin with, and then just became stronger. And that's what I'm grateful for.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your authenticity, because it comes out just in droves from where you're communicating, what you're sharing, your journey, how you view manufacturing, how you view leadership, how you view your entrepreneurial journey. It is very inspiring, and it brings to my mind. Sometimes, Scott, you just got to say it. Just say it and have the tough conversation. You're not always going to choose the right syllables or the right words, but to your point, the best of intentions are there. And if that can help you have the conversation where you can learn, regardless of any of these topics we've talked about, well, that might not be half the battle, but it's a good chunk of it. So, what an inspiring. One last question. We're going to make sure folks know how to connect with you in Pioneer Service, Aneesa. But what does the next chapter hold for the company, you think? And of course, don't share anything you don't want to share, but I bet the art of the possible is what comes to mind when we're sitting down and talking with you.
Expansion. Our goal is to grow and grow in a positive way, not overburden ourselves. But at the same time, I believe that, now that the pandemic is almost, I don't want to take it for granted, but almost behind us. I think that right now manufacturing is booming. and we're in a very, niche, and we know exactly what we can provide our customers. And now that we are making really complex parts and touching a lot of industries and diversified industries, diversified applications. After the business loss, that was a big one that I learned the hard way. But nonetheless, I feel like that there's still parts that we really want to touch and start making. And to do so, we have to step up our game and get, more machines, maybe cooler machines, right? We're going to be in Swiss. That's our niche. We have some turning centers, and we're able to make, bigger parts, but really the smaller parts, that's where we found that we can do really good stuff. And so that's our goal, is to really grow and to also, we want to be more in the medical industry. We do medical devices, but we want more in that space, because we all know that I'm not going to be a doctor at this point in my career, but making parts that, help people get better. And, I know that we were making parts to treat cancer patients for many years. And knowing that that's, one of the parts that we were making, that really does put it into a full circle moment for us, especially if you have family or people that, firsthand have suffered, right? And so that's my goal for my company, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I love it. Well, we look forward to keeping our finger on the pulse and tracking your progress. It is such an amazing story already. So I can only wait to see what the next few chapters bring forth. So, but I love that sense of mission and purpose. There's that noble element that's part of the manufacturing industry, and that was one of my favorite parts, the camaraderie, that esprit de corps you find in a manufacturing organization. It's addictive. It really is. So, Aneesa Muthana, President, CEO, and co-owner with Pioneer Service. How can folks connect with you and your organization?
We're all over social media. LinkedIn, is a big one for us. But absolutely, email. I'd be happy to share my email address. But yeah, I would love to hear from your listeners, and I hearing the feedback is really essential for me. It really drives me, knowing that my story resonates with others and people are aligned to what I'm thinking. It drives me even more, if you can imagine.
Well, I think they can already hook a city block electrical grid to you, and we have green energy forever. But really, admire. We need passionate, authentic leaders that are so laser focused on establishing and acting on those core values that you spoke about. So, a pleasure to meet you and sit down and learn more about your story and share it with our team, our organization, and our community here at Supply Chain Now. So, all the best, Aneesa Muthana, President, CEO, co-owner at Pioneer Service. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Okay, so listeners, wow, if that doesn't invigorate you, you better check your pulse. A lot of good stuff from Aneesa today. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I have. Hey, on that note, if you like conversations like this, be sure to check us out at supplychainnow.com. I hope y'all have wherever you are, hope you have a wonderful, wonderful month of April. But most importantly, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.